There is college football on tonight and tomorrow, and week 0 starts on Saturday. So, with the season here, everyone's making all these predictions, and Iowa State's at the bottom of all of them. I'm here to tell you that just about everybody's got this team wrong.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, my name is Nick Marovets, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. Today, we are talking about why I think Iowa State will surprise the Big 12. And what exactly I mean by surprise, I'll break down in this first segment. I'm going to lay out a few different scenarios and why I think it's legitimately possible from the surprise standpoint. Then in the second segment, we're going to take a look at the team. What exactly about this team makes me think they can shock anybody? Because nobody else seems to be very excited about them. And then finally, to round out today's show, we're going to explore some alternate timelines. And what exactly I mean by that, you're going to have to stick around to find out. Now, we're going to start with Iowa State will surprise. They're going to surprise the Big 12. I truly think this is the case. I really do. When you look at their schedule, I've seen some predictions that legitimately have Iowa State going like 3-9. And that's fine. You know, like I've been very transparent about the fact that Iowa State will likely be picked dead last to just about every team ranking, every Big 12 ranking. When you're ranking all of the FBS, all of FBS and FCS, they're going to fall to the bottom of basically all of those rankings. So I'm not really getting myself worked up too much about this as much as I can help it. I just do think they're going to be a surprising team. I don't think they're going to go and win 10 games or anything like that, but I think they're going to be surprising. And so to see 3-9 on a few predictions is just a little bit, it's not insulting, but it's like genuinely almost confusing. When you look at their schedule, for them to go 3-9, they would likely beat SEMO and Bowling Green and then only one other team. And I just have a very hard time seeing that. I'm just going to be honest. The way I see it right now is Iowa State will beat SEMO and Bowling Green. Now, beyond that, to say will beat is, I think that's probably a little bit too far. I don't think you could say that about really anyone else on their schedule, but I would say they should beat UCF, Cincinnati, and maybe you could go so far as to say Baylor and West Virginia. Okay. I would be okay with putting those two maybe in the next category just because we don't really know who, or at least I don't really know what Baylor's about. I think West Virginia is a should win for Iowa State. And then the last one that's like borderline for me is Oklahoma State. I'm leaning more towards could win for them, and I'll get to that in a second. But as far as should win goes, I believe Iowa State should beat, I'll say UCF, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. Even at the bare minimum, which I think you could probably throw two more in that category, that's 3 wins outside of the 2 that I think are like will wins, not even must wins, like just guaranteed almost in a way. And that would put Iowa State at 5 wins, which is very much knocking on the door, obviously 1 win away from a bowl game. 3 wins is just kind of crazy. And I'm not calling out any one, prediction. It's just like, I can't believe I'm seeing that number. I really don't see Iowa State being that bad. The last category that I want to talk about is could win games. And I think Iowa State could win against Iowa. I think they could win against Utah. I think they could win against Kansas State. And I would honestly potentially even put Kansas State in the should wins, but we'll see. It's end of the season against them. Maybe they'll heat up throughout the course of the year. I think Iowa State will too, but I'm just going to put them in the could win for now. And then, as I said, borderline Baylor, Oklahoma State, like where do you want to put those between should and could? I would be okay probably with either. It's just how you feel about those squads, about the coaches, the quarterbacks, the whatever, right? And so some people are very high on Oklahoma State and some people are not. I'm somebody who is anticipating them to be quite good. And so I'm going to put them in the could win category. If Iowa State were to win, and I'm saying the Iowa game is truly just because it's a rivalry, right? I've been very open, transparent about like our rivalry games can kind of go either way. One team might be a lot better. It's going to be a closer game. And when games are close, anything can happen. So if Iowa State were to win all of the games I am dubbing as could, should, and pretty much will win games, their hypothetical win total, I guess, record would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wins. Okay, 10 wins. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to achieve 10 wins. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit here. Okay, I'm just saying that they have a chance to win in 10 games this season. A very good chance in a few of them, a relatively good chance in a handful, and then I would say winnable chance. Like there is a chance. It's kind of like the Jim Carrey. Like you're telling me there's a chance, or so you're saying there's a chance. I don't know the quote. My point is, it's not 0, it's not 100, somewhere in between. 10 games that I think Iowa State can win. Now, there are 2 games that I didn't mention. BYU on the road, Arizona on the road, both around the bye. Those, I believe, will be very challenging. And I was kind of on the line with the whole Arizona thing. Are they a team that's like it's not a can't win game, but it's such a low percentage. I didn't even really want to put it in the could win. BYU, I still think is a game that Iowa State can win. But like, let's be a little realistic here. I think they're probably going to win that game. I am just going to leave those off for now because I think Iowa State, if you just assess the other 10 games, that would be a surprising year for Iowa State. If Iowa State goes anywhere over 4 wins, is that considered a surprise? 6 wins, 8 wins? If they got to 10 wins, yes, that would be a very big surprise for the Big 12. So then I was like, okay, well, a lot kind of has to go their way if they're going to win, let's say 8 or 9 games, which I would say that's pretty surprising for the Big 12. I think it's possible, but a lot has to go their way. They have to win a lot of the games that they have to win all the games that they should. They have to win a lot of the games that they could. And they probably have to get a few lucky breaks along the way, such as Kansas State not being who people think they are, Oklahoma State not being who people think they are, Utah not being as good as some are saying they will be. Those are the kind of breaks they're probably going to need to get along the way. So let's explore the possibility they don't do all of that, right? They just win one game. And I think that's almost more possible. So looking at this schedule, what games would really shock the Big 12? And the reason I wanted to even talk about this, I let this first part of the segment go a little long, so I'm going to have to rush through this. But the reason I even want to talk about this is remember 2024 Kansas? Okay. Kansas in 2024 beat Lindenwood to start the season, and then they rattled off 5 losses in a row. Illinois, UNLV, to then start conference play, lost to West Virginia, TCU, Arizona State. I don't need to go through the scores of all those, but yikes. And then they beat Houston. Cool. Found a win somewhere, and they lost to Kansas State. Then over their next 3 games, they beat 17 Iowa State, which I remember specifically that game. Not a big fan of that one. They beat number 6 BYU, and they beat number 16 Colorado. That team did not make a bowl game. That Kansas 2024 squad finished the year with 5 wins. They had a chance to get their 6th against Baylor, an unranked Baylor at the end of the season, and they couldn't do it. They finished 5-7. That was not a good Kansas squad, but they beat a number 6 BYU. They beat, I would say, a pretty good Iowa State team that year. A lot of injuries. It is what it is, right? They beat a Colorado team that was ranked, okay? And my point with all of this is sometimes there are going to be teams that just win a game. That was a 3-game stretch for Kansas where everyone's like, what is going on? That had major implications for the Big 12 title game, if you remember. Iowa State doesn't need to string together 3 straight games and literally terrorize the rest of the Big 12 conference. They could potentially just find themselves winning against BYU. They could find themselves winning against Arizona. I don't know who else Iowa State would be competing against that would be like extremely challenging or leading the conference. The only other game that I have circled, and I said it in my predictions, was Oklahoma State. I got crazy with my prediction. I said Oklahoma State's going to win the Big 12, but Iowa State's going to beat them on the way there. I don't know if Oklahoma State's going to be in that position. They might end up stinking. Okay. But if they do end up winning the Big 12, that's absolutely a game that Iowa State can win. And so there's 2 ways that Iowa State can surprise people this season. One of which being they're just better than people think they're going to be. They rattle off more wins than people are giving them credit for right now. And I think that's relatively reasonable. But even if you don't believe in Iowa State over the course of the season, to tell me that they don't have the talent to win in some of these games where they're going to be an underdog, where they're going to be a 2-touchdown, 3-touchdown dog, like at Iowa right now, to tell me Iowa State cannot win that game, I won't listen to that argument. That just sounds very closed off to me. I think that's a game that Iowa State absolutely can win. Will it be challenging? Is it unlikely? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it's over before it's even begun. I legitimately think Iowa State could very realistically win that game. And I'm trying to keep my realism hat on. Like, I just can absolutely see that situation playing out where Iowa State plays well. Iowa has a few bad beats, a couple bad turnovers. Iowa State's in the game at the end of the, as time's about to expire, and Kyle Conradi kicks through another 54-yarder. Are you telling me that's impossible? It's not. Iowa State can and probably will surprise a lot of people this season because I think they're better than almost everybody is giving them credit for. But the question is why? Why is Iowa State going to surprise people this upcoming season? Specifically, players, formations, plays. We're going to talk about all of that coming up right here after this. But first, a word from our friends over at Indeed. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute that I have been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. When you're talking about bringing in the right person for Iowa State, is there a better example than Iowa State? Bringing in, obviously, Jimmy Rogers, his entire staff, and then you look at the entire roster. It is beyond important to set that culture, and Jimmy Rogers has done that from the very get-go. Iowa State brought in the right dude. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. So I think Iowa State will be surprising this year, but the question is how? Is it that they win 8-9 games? Is it that they win a game that they really shouldn't? I don't really know, to be honest. We have yet to see, and I guess I could entirely be wrong about this thing, but I see Iowa State as a legit contender in the Big 12 this season. That's going to get clipped out of context. I don't mean they're going to win the Big 12. A contender in each and every game that they're a part of. But why? Because the Locked On Top 100 rankings have come out, and Iowa State doesn't have a single player on there. I feel like I want to put these graphics up, but I also don't at the same time, just because I don't want to talk about it. But my point is, Iowa State allegedly doesn't have even one of the top 100 players in the country. How can you be so confident that they're going to win games they shouldn't, that they're going to rattle off 8 wins? I've heard people talking about the schedule, saying it's not favorable for Iowa State. I disagree. That is one of the reasons why I think Iowa State can shock people. I think Iowa State has a better schedule than people are giving them credit for. People are just too excited about Utah. People are too high on Kansas State. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay. And I think Oklahoma State is a good team, but I still don't think that they're like miles above Iowa State. I think Iowa is a good opponent. They're a decent team that plays football, but that's not a game that Iowa State can't win. I've seen some clips on the interwebs, and I got to be honest, feeling pretty good about Iowa State. Now, I've also seen some clips from Iowa State, and I got to keep everything in check here, but I don't think Iowa is going to be this world beater this season. I just don't foresee that happening. I see it much more 50-50, and so Iowa State can win that game. It's a rivalry game. It's on the road, but I think it's possible. One of the main reasons I think Iowa State will be shocking this season is the schedule, but another one is the major shift I think Iowa State is going through is a good one. When Iowa State, was talked about for the last 10 years, it had a very clear message. The sentence that was being said about Iowa State, you knew that it was about Iowa State without even having to hear Cardinal and Gold or Iowa State or Cyclones. You just kind of knew. There was just a persona to the Matt Campbell era that eked its way through microphones, into earbuds, and honestly into the air around Jack Trice Stadium. You just knew what Iowa State was about. And now I think a lot of people are still drawing a like they're the same to a lot of people. Iowa State now and Iowa State last year, who Iowa State was with the roster that they had and who Iowa State is now with the roster that they have. They are not the same. Iowa State last season with Matt Campbell and the identity they had and the players they had is one thing. Iowa State this season has a brand new coach, brand new assistant coaches, brand new roster, and most importantly, brand new identity. So to sit here and you hear like, well, this is what Iowa State's been over the last how many years? I don't know if they're going to make it work with these players. Why are we talking about the last however many years? Genuinely, completely irrelevant. It really is. We're only here to talk about Jimmy Rogers, who, when you want to look at his history, is very different than Iowa State's. It's just entirely different. So do you want to focus on the building, Jack Trice Stadium? Do you want to focus on the practice facility? That's kind of what you're focusing on when you're comparing this team to last year or to the year before. I understand the concept that people want to look at Penn State and say, oh, it's full of Iowa State players. That's one thing. When you look at their starting, lineup, it's ridiculously lined with Cardinal and Gold from years past, right? But for Iowa State this season, I would say that it's not so one-sided. Yes, there are going to be a fair amount of Washington State guys that play, but it's not ridiculous. It's definitely noticeable, but I don't think even if you're doing that, you're not comparing them to Iowa State of years past, right? That's the biggest disconnect I'm seeing with this upcoming season, is that I think people are assuming that this roster is going to have the same identity that Iowa State has had for the last 10 years. And I will say, if that were the case, they wouldn't be very good. This roster, the way that it's been constructed, I don't think would work very well under Matt Campbell, or the way that he built up the program, or the identity that he had, or the values he had. There are some similarities and some things that Jimmy Rogers wants to keep intact, but this upcoming season is Jimmy Rogers and his identity, and the way that he talks to the media and the way that the players interact with each other is so different that it's not the same. It's not even close to the same. And I really think there is a world where next season, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in our third segment, but if Iowa State wins 6 games this year, they'll have such a different identity that even with, you could have 0 roster turnover, you could have a ton of roster turnover, people will understand who Jimmy Rogers is, and their predictions around Iowa State will sound a lot different come next season. Now, the final thing I want to talk about for why Iowa State is going to be a surprise this season for many is I think Jalen Raynor is going to be a bigger reason for winning, I guess, than many think he will. I truly think he is a hidden gem for the transfer portal class, but more than that, Aidan Flora. More than that, the defensive scheme shift for Iowa State. I just talked about identity. Talk about defensive identity and shift from a 3 to a 4 down lineman front, right? Or shift in what this defensive line is even going to be capable of doing. Talk about it all the time. Iowa State last offseason was like, sacks or whatever. Not really the vibe of this team. So I think from players, formations, plays, to identity, to just general perception of the program, there's a plethora of reasons why Iowa State will surprise people this upcoming season. I'm not going to sit here and say, even if it gets clipped out of context, I'll go to bat and say, I never said Iowa State's going to win a Big 12 title this season. Jimmy Rogers did, and I love why, that he did that, why he did that. I'm a huge fan of that. But I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, Iowa State's winning 10 games. I don't think they are. I think it's possible. I think they can. I don't think they will. I don't have to think they will. I'm not the head coach. I believe in this team more than other people do. It's all about relativity. That's the biggest thing. Now, even if I am wrong, let's say Iowa State wins 4 games. Let's say Iowa State wins 12 games. Let's say I'm wrong on both ends of the spectrum. What exactly does that mean? We'll dive into that in deeper detail coming up right here after this. But first, a word from our friends over at FanDuel. Locked on Cyclones is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. We are 9 days away from Iowa State football being played on the field. And as much as I can feel it, smell it, hear it, we're not quite there. And baseball being on every single day is really carrying me through until the start of Iowa State's season. So, are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. I think Iowa State's going to surprise people this year. I don't see it going any other way, personally. But I could be wrong. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. So I wanted to end today's show talking about a few other alternate timelines, if you will. Go Doctor Strange mode a little bit and talk about what if Iowa State has 1 win, 0 wins, 2 wins, 5 wins, 10 wins, 85 wins. I don't know. I just wanted to explore some of these different possibilities because I'm sure I'll see a bunch of tweets between now and the start of the season saying, "Oh, Iowa State's going to have this many wins. They're going to have that many wins." And I'm sure you guys will be letting me know in the comments down below right after you hit the subscribe button on your way down there because it is completely free and helps us prove that it is in fact a Cyclone State. So I appreciate you doing that, and probably tweeting at me on Twitter and stuff at Nick_Marv. But let's start with Iowa State. Winning 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 games. I'll say this. If Iowa State wins 0, 1, I say 0 or 1 games, I will be very concerned because if they were to win 0 or 1 games, what game, first off, did they win? Because that means they lost at least half of their non-conference games, if not all of them, and they somehow won a game. Did a team choose to forfeit? Like, how, if they lost both of their non-conference games to SEMO and Bowling Green, and then they beat BYU or something ridiculous? It's all context dependent, but essentially that would be a failure. That's about the only way I could see this season being a true failure. And I would even probably lump 2 wins in there, winning just your non-conference games. Probably not going to do it. Doesn't necessarily mean that Jimmy Rogers is on his way out, but boy, did that seat get unexpectedly hot, unexpectedly quickly if Jimmy Rogers only wins 0, 1, or 2 games this season. If Iowa State goes on to win 3 or 4 games, I think really what we're dealing with here is just that, okay, rebuild was a little bit bigger than we expected, or at least than I did. Okay, that's probably where a lot of people think Iowa State's going to fall this season. I'd be curious to see, did they lose every game by 1 score? Did they, what was the turnover ratio? Why did Iowa State lose every game but their non-conference games, or just 1 or 2 other ones? Excuse me. I would just be curious why in that situation. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Jimmy Rogers was a bad hire. The experiment failed, anything like that. It just means, okay, things were probably a little bit worse than I thought. I still trust the system. I think we still have like an all new transfer portal, and we start to get Jimmy Rogers recruiting class in. Yeah, that really rough start is bad for recruiting down the road, but we aren't completely at a loss yet. We still have a little bit of time. If Iowa State's able to win 5, 6 games this season, I think we're probably looking at Iowa State being a problem in years to come just because of where the roster is at. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Iowa State has one of the best rosters in the Big 12. I think they can surprise people, but I don't think you're looking at household names across the country by week 8 type of roster. So if Iowa State's able to win 5-6 games, I truly think that Jimmy Rogers, his ability to lead, his ability to coach in these games, it obviously depends which games does Iowa State win. Do they lose a bad one, but they win one they shouldn't have? Do they only win the ones they were favored in? How does it all play out exactly? Do they go on a crazy 6-game tear to start the season? They start 6-0 and then they finish 0-6. That would obviously be telling, but I think if Iowa State wins 5 or 6 games, Jimmy Rogers is a coach to look out for in the coming years. And like I said earlier, the perception around Iowa State will be very much different. People will understand that this is a different era, a different regime than it was in years past, and you have to approach the team and the roster in an entirely different way. If Iowa State is able to exceed 6 wins this season, Jimmy Rogers will be winning Iowa State a Big 12 title at some point. The only caveat to that being he could get picked up before we get to that point. If Iowa State wins 7 or 8 games this season, he is way ahead of schedule. I mean, we're talking what he's winning games he probably shouldn't with a roster that it's like, it's not great. It's definitely serviceable, clearly. And it's not bad necessarily, but it's 7 or 8 wins is impressive. And I think a lot of that comes from scheme. I think a lot of that comes from getting the program to buy into itself, no matter where they're at physically. And also using the players on the roster and putting them in the best position possible for each and every one of them. That is what a head coach does. And that to me is extremely convincing that down the road, Iowa State will be great. If Iowa State wins, 9, 10, 11, 12 games this season, well, do I really have to spell that one out for you? I mean, yeah, I'm going to be pretty insufferable. Now, of course, if Iowa State wins 11 games this season and their 1 losses to Iowa, that will hurt. Because that'll be so much louder than if Iowa State wins 2 games. And of course, they lose to Iowa, right? Like, Iowa fans aren't going to say anything in the same realm as if Iowa State won 11 games. So I don't need to necessarily lay out what Iowa State will be, in the coming years if Iowa State wins 9, 10 games. Obviously made the right hire. I'm concerned about Jimmy Rogers and how long he could end up staying at Iowa State in that case. I just think top to bottom, Iowa State, unless they end up with 0, 1, or 2 wins, you're poised for a successful season. I think they're going to be surprising to some because the expectation is so low. Going into next year, maybe the expectation is a bowl game, and then it's a little harder to surprise people. It's a little harder for teams like Texas Tech and BYU to surprise teams this season because everybody expects them to be great. They would probably have to go out and, go undefeated and win a Big 12 title or win a national title or make it to the semifinals game and, beat some opponent that was really good all year by 30 points to surprise people. Iowa State, you win 6 games, you've surprised the country. You win 1 game against a major opponent. Nobody thought you were going to win more than 1 conference game. So, or maybe 2 or 3. I have a hard time believing that Iowa State won't surprise people this season because the bar is set so low. And when you consider that, I'm curious if you agree, if you disagree with me. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter at Nick_Marv. That being said, that is all I have for today. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.